Welcome back to Benny's Custom Works. Today we're pulling the interior out of the IS200. Why, you ask? Well, this is now a track car or a motorsports based car. None of the events we do we can actually have rear seat passengers anyway. So we're going to pull out all the back seat trims and everything that's associated with that. And we're also going to change the driver's seat today for a more motorsports orientated seat. And if we get time and if the boss kit's correct, we're actually also going to change to a non-airbag steering wheel. What is that? It's like a hole. Must be so you can put your skis in there. Now you guys may have noticed that we've left the electric window switches on the rear doors. Pretty simple reason is this system actually requires this switch to be plugged in even though you're operating it from the driver's side. It still runs through this switch, so you have to actually retain the rear window switches. Eventually we'll probably gut these doors and actually remove all the window mechanisms completely, but for now we're going to retain the windows. It's nice and handy. We can open the windows if we need at the track to let some cool air in the car. Long term, who knows what's going to happen with this, but for now we're just going to retain these. So quick cable tie to this bracket and then it'll stop it sort of flapping around and being annoying. So handy little tip if you're gutting your race car is to retain the window switches unless you don't want the windows to move at all. Oh, this is gorgeous. Oh my God, these are heavy. There must be like a width adjustment plate or something like that. Have a look at these instructions in a second, which are in Japanese. Hopefully I'll take a quick crash course and work out how to read it. This is our bride or breed seat from Japan. Funnily enough, the rail actually cost us more than the seat. Talking purchase price, nothing to do with freight or anything like that. But yeah, we picked this seat up cheap, secondhand. It's had a bit of a hand-stitched dodgy repair on the bolster on the outer side, but for what we're going to do, it's really not going to matter. They're not a bad seat. It's not a full motorsport seat, so it's got pretty wide bolsters, but it still can be reclined. I didn't actually intend on using this for my own project originally, but because it's been sitting around, I thought I'd just throw it in, and we'll probably change to a more motorsport orientated seat later down the track. But for now, this is a lot better than the IS200 seat that was in it. And the offshoot of it is it's a ton lighter. So the IS200 that we've got is like a luxury or a sport option from memory. There's sort of something funky going on there. So it's got electric seats and sunroofs and all these sort of heavy accessories, which down the track we're going to actually pull a lot of that out of the car because we don't need it. And yeah, it's just going to add more weight. A lot of Japanese manufacturers like to put the seatbelt buckle actually on the seat rail now. In the past, I've actually been caught out not thinking bolt the seat in all the way, and then you go to clip the seatbelt in and there's nothing to clip it to. So once you rip your seat out, have a really good look at it. Double check to make sure that the buckle is or isn't on the seat. If it is, obviously you've got to swap it over to the new rail. In the case of the Cresta actually, because when we fabricated the new seat mount, we didn't have a point to put the buckle, so we had to then make a mount for that buckle as well. So if you are actually making your own mounts and stuff, you've got to have a look at that. Obviously, if you do decide to make your own seat rails or seat mounts, do a lot of research. If you're going to put it into a street car, you do need to speak to an engineer in any state in Australia. Different laws obviously are going to apply in different countries. One thing also to mention, a lot of these aftermarket rails that are off the shelf available internationally aren't actually ADR compliant and still need to be inspected by an engineer before you install them in a street car. Same with these seats, the Bride seats aren't ADR compliant. So you've got to kind of do your research and make sure that if you are going to install these in a street car, to make sure it complies with your state or province or country's regulations, because there's potentially, if you have an accident and there's an injury, you may actually not have insurance. So there's all sorts of kind of potential ramifications if you're doing stuff to your car that's not certified in the correct way, especially with seats. And obviously we're going to touch on that a little bit more when we do the steering wheel with removing airbags. Once again, make sure it's compliant with your road regulations in your state, country or province. We're in the bolt box of death, or the BRZ bolt box of death, looking for some seat rail bolts. Bride supply all the bolts to assemble the rail, but they don't actually supply any bolts to bolt the seat to the rail. A little bit disappointing, but we'll have a dig and find some high-grade bolts. Whatever, the carpet's going to go in the bin anyway. Jesus, this isn't much lighter than the other one. Jokes. Another little handy Benny tip. When you're putting the seat in, before you go actually tightening any of the bolts, you got to put all of them in. That goes for a lot of stuff really, anything that's got multiple holes that you might need to move the seat around a little bit. If you go tightening maybe like one or two, like say if you tighten the two back ones, a lot of the time you'll find you can't get the front ones in. So like you can see, there's actually quite a bit of movement still in that seat with them not tightened down. So it actually helps you line all the holes up properly and not strip or round or damage any threads. So yeah, just wiggled it around and got all of the bolts in finger tight. So once they're done finger tight, we'll zip them up with a gun and then hand check them with a ratchet, and then we're good to go. We've just undone the airbag. It's worth keeping in mind that anything you ever do with SRS stuff, you need to disconnect the battery first. We're lucky that this thing seems to consume the entire volume of the battery in about 2 hours if you don't do anything with it. So it's self-disconnecting, but to make sure we have dropped the negative terminal off anyway. Also worth mentioning, we are going to put a non-airbag steering wheel in this. It's pretty highly illegal in most countries or most states to actually remove the airbag from an airbag equipped vehicle for street use. Obviously, being that this is a stat write-off and you can't drive it on the street, there's no real ramifications for us, but worth keeping in mind that you're probably going to do like issues like with your insurance if you do remove it. Same as we've already mentioned, changing seats and seat rails and stuff. This is a supplementary restraint. So in the event of an accident, the bag deploys to sort of save you. So if you remove this, fair chance you're going to hit something else in the car, because a lot of these cars with the SRS setups are designed in a different way than a car that wouldn't have SRS. So your head may be closer to stuff than it would be if you're in a non-airbag equipped car. So just worth keeping in mind that for street use, it's probably worth just leaving the standard steering wheel or another version. I know a lot of OEM cars, you can actually swap complete steering wheels with airbags between earlier and later models. I've done it with no problems before. My Stager actually has an S15 steering wheel in it. That was a direct replacement, so there's no sort of weirdness with airbags, and the wiring's exactly the same. It's also illegal to cut and modify airbag wiring at all. Even in the event of a repair, you need to replace the whole section of the wiring harness. That's at least true in Australia. I'm not sure about other countries, but here you definitely are not allowed to repair airbag wiring. So all of these kind of things are worth keeping in mind before you go mucking around with a late model car, because you can create more hazards than you sort of negating by pulling airbags out. So worth keeping in mind that these are actually here for a reason. So unless it's a motorsport vehicle, I probably wouldn't recommend to remove your airbag steering wheel or airbag seat or curtain airbags or any of the SRS equipment at all, really. I know I've already mentioned this quite a few times, but when removing steering wheels, you've got to be pretty careful not to actually smack yourself in the face pulling the steering wheel off. It's always advisable to leave the steering wheel nut, or in the case of a lot of cars from America and some European stuff, the bolt. Back it off probably half the amount of threads, and then give the steering wheel a good sort of bash either side, and then start to pull it towards you. Because if you actually just start reefing on it, you are going to break your nose if you hit yourself in the face. I've seen it happen firsthand. So I've already mentioned before, a guy I used to work with broke his nose pulling a steering wheel off. So it's 5-second trick for not 2 hours in emergency. So keep that in mind if you're changing your steering wheels over. We've got our steering wheel here. It's a pretty nice suede personal wheel. It is second hand, but it hasn't done a lot of work. I actually bought this in Japan on a trip a few years ago. I just grabbed it because it was quite a nice wheel, even though I didn't really have an intention on putting it on anything at the time. And now we've actually got something cool to put it on. At one point it was going to go on the Cresta, but it's probably not quite Cresta friendly. The styling's probably a little bit too modern. So I've just held on to it for a project, and this seems like a pretty good one. We've also got our Boss kit here. It's a HKB Sports one, which is a genuine Japanese one. There's a lot of these have been copied on eBay. I actually bought one thinking it was a genuine one and got it here and it was a Chinese copy, so haven't even bothered to sort of give that a mention until now. But these are definitely made in Japan, and they're the correct one for the vehicle. So you've got your correct spline, and hopefully it's even got a cutout for the clock spring, so we don't have to modify or touch that. So we can more or less just tie that up. But it also comes with all the nuts to fit the steering wheel to the Boss kit. But to throw a spanner in the works, we've also got this quick release steering wheel spacer. It's a genuine Works Bell one, so it's a good quality Japanese one. Again, not a Chinese copy. I don't know if we're going to fit this yet because it may end up being sort of too tall. It's going to be like a Christmas tree. So I'm going to put the Boss kit on the column first and then sort of have a look at my spacing. And if it's in the right position, we'll fit this. And if not, we're just going to run the steering wheel directly onto the Boss kit. So we'll open up the box and have a little bit of a look on what's inside, and then we'll start fitting it up. Sweet, bolt and an Allen key. The Japanese are so efficient. Oh, that's nice. Oh, that's mad. Huh. Even has cruise control buttons. Huh. That's sick. I didn't think we were going to have that cool stuff. Wow, they've done a good job on this boss kit, eh? Direct plug into the column. Got our little indicator cancelling holes. It's a really nice little boss kit. And the price was actually quite reasonable. I think it was like 130 bucks delivered, which does sound a bit dear for a boss kit, but seeing now the features you get with it, that's actually really cool. So, although, I mean, I guess we're having this argument again about pulling airbags out of a street car, but if you do decide that you actually want to do that, even though I don't recommend it, it's probably pretty cool that you do retain your cruise control functions. And it is quite a nice looking little product. So, not quite sure what that relief there is for, but pretty neat little thing to cruise around in your car with your illegal non-cruise boss kit, or your illegal cruise control non-airbag boss kit. Direct fit. Oh wow, they even give you the Torx bit to remove the steering wheel. So I should open the boss kit first. These guys are all over it. So you even get the security Torx bit to remove your airbag, and you get a resistor, which means your airbag light won't come on, even though we're not going to fit that part of it. And you get some mad instructions in Japanese, no doubt. Only Japanese, no English. Yep, smashing. Another cool little feature of this boss kit, actually, it has a top point marked on it. So obviously you have your wheels straight before you remove your steering wheel. So then you just put your top point to the top, which also on this particular one puts your cruise control buttons at the top, which is a nice little feature. Then you feed your little bits of wiring through and whack it on the column. Hold it, hold it, hold it, hold it. Jerk. A good way to actually gauge where your steering wheel should be is to put your seat in the correct position you normally drive in, put your feet on the pedals, and then put your arm out like this. When your arm's with your wrist touching the steering wheel, your arm should be slightly bent, so not dead straight. So dead straight, it sort of puts it sort of 50 mil forward of the steering wheel. So sort of just on your wrist, just arms bent, and that's pretty much exactly where you want it. So we are not going to run the steering wheel spacer just for the sake of having it, because it's actually not going to do us any favors, and it's going to actually give you a very cramped driving style. So when you add all of this stuff together, you can see how sort of bent my arm is, whereas it should be sort of out there. So yeah, basically the whole thickness of the spacer pushes it way too far towards the driver. So I'm just going to go with the boss kit alone on this install, and it should be in quite a good spot and an enjoyable, comfortable driving position, so that we're not cramped up and sort of the wheels too close and you never got full arm travel, and then it's not too far away and you've never sort of got a comfortable position either. So having it in the right spot actually does a lot for your driving enjoyment and your comfort. So something to keep in mind when you are going to set up your steering column for driving. I mean, everyone just wants to have the removable steering wheel for the E points, but we were just going to have it for the convenience of getting in and out of the car, but we don't need it today, so I'm just going to put that on the shelf for the next project, and we'll smash this on with just the boss kit and the steering wheel. And then I've got to go and find a oversized novelty horn button, because the steering wheel didn't come with one. Add horn sound effect. Quite a comfortable position. Let's see how bad I can terribly drive this thing on Thursday night. Stupid rubbish, fake half E-throttle junk. Someone's actually going to send me a throttle body that's going to delete that apparently, so I'm pretty keen to see if it actually works. He's confident it's going to work. Obviously we're going to lose things like traction control, which we've already disabled, so who cares about that. The only thing he did mention is that it's probably not going to have idle control. So all we may have to do is just sort of wind the stop screw in a little bit and it'll idle high all the time, but I'm not too fussed about that. So that'll be pretty cool. So fingers crossed that turns up in the next couple of days. So we'll see what happens. We finished up the interior of the car. Every second comment on the internet is buff your headlights. We were actually going to do a separate video on that, how to do it properly. But to appease the masses, we're going to give it a quick tidy up now. Just got like a little cotton buffing pad on the drill. Just going to give it a quick once over. I've just got some buffing and wax compound on there. Just give it a quick whiz. We'll probably do a proper like sand and buff and sand and buff and sand and buff video later, but this will at least make them not yellow for this Thursday. We've also got our Altezza grill, which I'm going to quickly slot in as well while we're here. It should be like a 5-minute install. You don't actually have to pull the front bar off if you've already got the grill out of it. So nice and simple to clip that in, but we'll buff the lights and throw the grill in, and then I think that's going to be us done for the day. Now you guys can see the difference. That's literally only sort of 5 minutes just with the little buffing pad. It's come up really well. It's actually shown me now that the lenses are clean that the headlights are actually not in the best condition. The chrome's actually like all pitted and started to go off inside the headlights. So I actually think we're not even going to bother doing anything else with these lights. That also probably explains why the light output's so terrible. So looking at it, you can see the reflector's actually gone really dull in there, whereas it should be a bright chrome. That's not going to help with the light output. So I don't know, maybe if we're going to keep doing night events, we might put a little light bar or something in the front, sort of smaller version of what Adam's got in his Sylvia or something like that, and that'll sort of project a lot more light. We might just put it lower in the bar though, not right up in the grill or right up where the headlights are. But yeah, I'm pleasantly surprised with how well the lens is clean, but I'm also a little bit disappointed with how bad a condition the chrome and the reflector's actually in. So potentially we'll chuck some different lights in it later, but these are still a lot better light output than the original ones that were blacked out. So that's actually probably even worse than what the condition of these are. So we'll quickly buff that other side and then put the grill in, and I think that's us done. One Altezza grill fitted. Go team. That's us done for the day on the IS200. Had a really successful day. We started with the back of the car. We've stripped all the interior that's no longer required. As I've already mentioned, all the events we're doing in this car, we can't actually have rear seat passengers anyway. So we've pulled anything that's unnecessary out of the back, like the rear seat, the seat belts, the parcel tray, the speakers that were cable tied in, all this sort of stuff that's no longer needed. Then moving into the front of the car, we've now fitted our bride seat and rail. We've got our personal steering wheel and HKB Boss kit. Then once that was done, we actually had a little bit of spare time. So we've jumped onto the front and given the headlights a quick buff. And we've fitted our Altezza grill, which has just come in from Japan. So really happy with how it's turned out. The headlights actually look better than I thought they would have with a bit of a buff. So we're nearly skid pan ready, and we'll see you guys next time. What?